Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Mary Anderson, Executive Director of the Family Pantry of Cape Cod in Harwich, and Amy Camenga, Board President of the Family Pantry. Mary and Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Laura.
Good morning.
Now, in the Lower Cape, the Family Pantry, I know, provides critical services to the community. Let's start by giving an overview of what the Family Pantry does. Mary?
Sure. We're physically located in Harwich, but the first thing I always like to make sure people know is we really serve all of the Cape. We go from Provincetown to Bourne and every town in between. And if you look at our numbers, they really follow the population. The largest chunk of clients come from the town of Barnstable. That's about 27% of the action. Then Dennis and Yarmouth, both with about 20%. Harwich, about 15%. And then the outer Cape from Brewster, Chatham, out to Provincetown, that's about 8%. So we really do serve all of the Cape. And I think that's not well known. A lot of people don't realize that.
Absolutely, because there are other family pantries around, obviously, but I think the Family Pantry of Cape Cod is one of the biggest. Is that right?
We are. We're the largest on the Cape that's open to anyone. The Falmouth Service Center is pretty similarly sized, but they serve the towns of Falmouth, Mashpee, and the Air Force Base. So we are the largest and that was our founders' position from day one. 25 years ago, we're in business 25 years, they knew a lot of the pantries were very geography specific, and they wanted this one to be open to anyone.
And you mentioned your founders, and maybe we should back up and give a little bit of history of the organization.
Sure. We just celebrated 25 years last fall. The anniversary is actually in August. It was started by a small group of volunteers out of the St. Vincent de Paul Society out of Holy Trinity Church. They were giving out the food vouchers to people in need, and were having difficulty keeping up because it is an expensive thing to give someone cash. So they decided to open a pantry. And started in a small storefront, paid the rent with the proceeds from bottles and cans, ran a big food drive over 4th of July, and opened for business. They outgrew that space in about a year, went into rented space, and now we own a 12,000 square foot warehouse-type building.
So it's really a big operation, and you have quite a number of programs besides just the food pantry, isn't that right?
We do. We also have clothing. We started that once we got into the rented warehouse, so clothing at no charge. We also assist people with applying for food stamps and fuel assistance.
And now in a new program this year, I remember the pantry started partnering with the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance. Is that right? Tell me about that program and how that came about.
It came about really from a day of service. The Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance came to the pantry. There were maybe 10 or 12 of them. They just wanted a day where they worked as a team. They cleaned, they painted, they organized. They were just a great group. And I think it was just in talking over sandwiches that John Papalardo, who heads that group up, said, we really need to do something else. And from there, we call it Fish for Families, is the fish program.
And how does it work exactly? Do you have certain days of the month when this goes on?
It's really, like most things in the fishing industry, dependent on weather and their schedules and their abilities to get the fish. So they let us know when they think they can have a distribution. Like right now, we're waiting for the call on skate wings. It was going to be March. With the weather, it's probably going to be April. But that's what kicks it off. And then the Fishermen's Alliance makes the arrangements to truck the fish up to New Bedford to a processor. And then we generally pick it up in our truck and then start the distribution from there.
And how have the clients reacted?
unbelievably. We just finished a survey that I should have brought with me this morning. I haven't totally analyzed it or even shared it with Amy yet, but the client response has been overwhelming. And Amy may want to comment on a couple of days that she was there to see it.
I was at the last one, and it was heartwarming. The fishermen, actually a couple of the fishermen that caught the fish came and were there to hand out the fish to the families. And the clients just love it. We also had a raw bar for them that one of the other fishermen was kind enough to bring, and it was quite amazing. Everybody was just having a wonderful time. The program is just so amazing that we're able to afford this because of the price that they give us. And when we have extra, we're actually able to give it to other pantries for their clients if we have extra, which is wonderful.
And I'm sure the fishermen are good about giving people some tips about how to cook the different fish. Is that right?
They actually are, and there's recipes.
We have recipes.
We do have recipes, and we had recipes that night for them as well.
And what a treat for the clients to have this fresh fish off the boat.
One of the questions in the survey that I really liked the answers, we asked if cost were not a factor, how often would you have fish? And the answers largely were once a week, every day, a couple times a month. It was pretty clear from the survey that people would eat a lot more fish if they could afford it.
And people really enjoy that, obviously. And the other thing you have in terms of fresh ingredients is a garden. Isn't that right?
We do. We have a large garden out in the back. We're fortunate to have land leased to us by the town of Harwich. And we grow, we've experimented. This is, I think, our 4th year for the garden. And we've experimented with a lot of different produce. And we've settled on people want the basics. They want tomatoes, lettuce, green beans, peas, squashes, some of the more esoteric, shall we say, vegetables people weren't that interested in. So that's a great success. It is one of the things I wanted to talk about this morning. We are looking for some garden volunteers. We run shifts Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from, I think, 8 to 10. And they might even start a little earlier when it starts to get hot, working in the garden. So we could use some help there. And we're also looking for someone that has some gardening know-how to kind of oversee the whole process of the garden. We had a volunteer for a couple of years who's stepping back, and we'd love someone to fill his shoes.
You need some green thumbs.
Some green thumbs, yes.
And how much acreage are you actually farming there then?
It's not quite an acre.
Okay.
2/3, maybe 3/4 of an acre.
But it's a fairly big operation because you're going from the late spring well into the fall.
We do have a number of groups that help us with the big projects. The Orleans District Court, I think they're actually under the Sheriff Cummings program. And Home Depot has been out to help us. AmeriCorps.
And sometimes the schools.
The schools, yep. Cape Cod Tech's horticultural group. And there are some more that are popping up this year.
Now, Amy, I wanted to get to you because as head of the board, I know sometimes the board might adjust the mission somewhat. And with these new programs with the garden and the fishing, I wonder if the board has adjusted the mission of the agency at all?
Not at all. The mission is the mission, and our mission is to provide food and clothing to those in need. It's just basic. It's what we do. It's our mission. And it's been that way for 25 years. The founders chose the name the Family Pantry for a reason, and that is because we think that every person that comes in the door, whether it's a client, whether it's a volunteer, is all part of the family. So, and we do have right now 425 plus volunteers throughout all of the areas of the pantry that need help.
And you probably could always use more.
We can. Just like Mary said,
Exactly.
Right now we've got a garden in need right now, which is soon, if we ever lose the snow on top of it. But yeah, I mean, that's up next. That's going to need a lot of work, but yes.
And you mentioned food and clothing, and so we haven't talked that much yet about the thrift shop. Tell me about that and how that works.
The thrift shop really has become our most successful self-help. We try as a nonprofit to be as self-sustaining as possible. We obviously can't do the whole thing. And the thrift shop has become very successful. It's all donated clothing. The clothing comes in through the pantry, and we ask people if they object to us using it in our thrift shop. All of that money comes back to the pantry. I can only think of 1 or 2 people in the 7 years that have said no, they want the clothing to stay in the pantry. So the thrift shop is in the retail part of Harwichport, run by 65 volunteers. We have clothing, jewelry, small household items, linens, books, magazines, and it does a fabulous job.
A terrific benefit to the community and also to the pantry.
It is. We are, our big news at the thrift shop is that we were kind of forced into a decision to find a new location. The building we're in is being torn down. So the board looked at options to rent. Ideally, we would have stayed in Harwichport. We would have rented something reasonable in Harwichport. There was nothing. So then we had to broaden our search a little and consider purchasing, and we have just purchased a 5,300 square feet.
Yes, it's quite large.
It is quite large.
An exciting change for that program.
Yes, exciting in that we'll be able to expand. It's probably 4 times the size of our existing shop, so we'll be able to expand not just the lines we already have, but we'll be able to expand the housewares and eventually get into small furniture.
Yeah, it opens a lot of possibilities for us. And there's storage there as well for us, which has been, all the storage right now has been in the building we're in for all the clothing. So we're going to be able to kind of spread things out a little bit better.
And when does the shop open?
The shop is open year-round. We're open in the off-season Tuesdays through Saturdays, 10 to 4. We have some great bargains. And then in the summer, we'll open Mondays as well. And then the move is going to take place, I'm hoping for August, but I think realistically it might be September. So we'll be doing a lot of advertising around the actual move date.
In advance of the new space and opening up in the new location. That will be more like August or September.
Correct.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Mary Anderson, Executive Director of the Family Pantry of Cape Cod, and Amy Camenga, Board President of the Family Pantry of Cape Cod. Now, what are you seeing this year in terms of the need on the Lower Cape, and as you said, Cape-wide, you serve people?
It's been a challenging winter. I'm at the pantry 10 years this summer, and I think we've only had 1 or 2 snow days in those 10 years. And this year we have been closed 5 days so far. And that's not an easy decision. We generally follow Monomoy School District. That's the school district where we're physically located. But last Thursday, the warehouse manager, program manager, and I decided, even though the school was open, we were not going to be open. Our volunteers tend to be older, and our clients, a lot of them travel some distance, and with the snow, it just didn't make sense. So we've been closed. Our numbers, we count 2 ways. We count unduplicated clients. That, so far, these 2 months is pretty flat. But I think with being closed 5 days, that's a little understated. And we also count the number of visits. And that, people get duplicated because they visit several times. Our visits are up about 5%. So that's probably more indicative of the level of need.
Now, do people come once a month or more than once a month?
Every 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then year to year, do you have a sense of, over the 25 years, growing, staying steady?
Heavy growth. We're up about, we have good numbers back to about 2005, and we're up about 70% since then. The big jump, as you're probably not surprised, was in 2008 when the economy had some hiccups, shall we say.
And since the Great Recession, as it's known, what's happened with the families and the clients? Are they seeing a little bit of relief since the recession years, or are there still challenges?
There are still challenges, and it's hard to know, because I certainly see improvement in the economy, but I think as some people get on their feet and don't need us, somebody else gets their electric bill that just went up, 20%, 30%, whatever it was, and that tips them into needing some help.
And what's a typical family that comes to the pantry? Because on the Cape, often people work 2 and 3 jobs, so it's not necessarily people unemployed. Is that right?
That's correct. 2/3 of the clients, someone in the household is working. And often it's 2 people working, and maybe they have a couple of jobs. But we fill that gap between the cost of living on the Cape and the wages for some of the service-level jobs. I'd say beyond the 2/3 that are the working folks that need help, then it's seniors and people with disabilities that are on a very limited income. That's a fair chunk of the action. And then there's people that temporarily need us because they're laid off or maybe an injury and out of work due to that. If you were to look at the clients, they're like you and me. They're from every walk of life and every story.
And speaking of every walk of life, we did open a satellite pantry at Cape Cod Community College.
Okay.
About a year and a half ago. And it's managed by the Legacy Club students, but it's under our operating principles. So, and that was huge. And they don't get the fresh produce, but they do get everything else that a pantry would get to help the students there.
And for people who can't make it to the pantry, do you have a program of people delivering goods to people's homes?
Funny you should ask.
Yes, it is.
Because that's next.
We have a goal next.
We've been talking about starting a mobile pantry, and just because we've been busy with some other things, it hasn't quite gotten off the ground. But we just got a grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and a team of 4 people are going to work with us to put together a business plan to implement a mobile pantry. We will probably start on the Outer Cape because that's been identified as underserved, and transportation's harder. So my vision is this kind of like a bookmobile. I don't know if you ever had a bookmobile when you were a kid, but it'll go to different locations. I'm thinking maybe start with the senior centers. I think the seniors are probably our most underserved population for a couple of reasons. Some of them are frail and can't get out. Some of them could get out, but it's transportation. I think there's a little intimidation as to what kind of crowd it's going to be at the pantry. We really worked hard this past year to bring the Chatham Council on Aging over with some seniors, and it was that reluctance of not knowing. They now love to come, and because of the snow and how crowded we are, we're now bagging the food. We're having them pick food and bagging it and sending it to them, but they can't wait till the weather's better and they can come back for the social part of it.
Lots of things going on at the Family Pantry of Cape Cod, and in the last 30 seconds or so we have left, any last words to leave with listeners perhaps about need for volunteers and donations, things like that?
I would say we talked about volunteers. Let's talk donations. We can always use donations. We have a Bag a Month program that's a monthly giving program. It's $25 a month or $300 for the year. There's also a program through TD Bank. This is where you can donate to us, and it doesn't cost anything. If you just choose to affiliate your account with the Family Pantry, TD donates their money to us based on your account. And we don't know who you are or what your assets are, so it's totally anonymous to us. We have a great website, thefamilypantry.com, and we'd love to hear from anyone who might like to volunteer.
Because any little amount that you give us, it does go a long way. It really does. So
great programs over there at the Family Pantry of Cape Cod. And unfortunately, we're out of time. I've been talking to Mary Anderson. She is Executive Director of the Family Pantry of Cape Cod, and Amy Camenga, who is Board President of the Family Pantry. Mary and Amy, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.